Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining this session on generative AI and authorship. I'd like to thank our partners, the San Jose State University School of Information, and with the future of AI as well. My name is Robin Kear. I'm an academic librarian in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, at the University of Pittsburgh. And I'm so happy to be talking with you today about generative AI and authorship and thinking about that for the next 30 minutes. So, can Gen AI be an author? If you could type in the chat, we could see quickly yes, no, or maybe. I can see it move quickly up and see what people are thinking. Maybe. Mostly no's, maybe, no, maybe. I see some maybes. No, not sure. Not without input. Maybe, not on its own. Not yet, not yet. Very important. Yes. Well, it's a good question. All good questions. Yes. Thank you so much for participating in that. I just wanted to get a quick view of the room. And yes, I'm also leaning towards no, as you'll see, and not yet, as one of you also said. Since the very public release of ChatGPT-3 in 2022, this question has been at the heart of my fears and what it means if this answer is yes or becomes yes. And if it is yes, does that mean that AI is becoming more sentient? Does it have more of its own consciousness and its own agency? So the technology is moving very fast, and I'm not going to explain that to you right now. I'm sure you heard much about that already, or you know much already about it. But it is moving fast, but it's not moving quite as fast as my fears. And I believe that the answer right now is no. With the current structure of the generative AI tools that are available, it is no. Gen AI reacts, it suggests, it anticipates. It amalgamates things that are already existing. It derives from other content. It does not yet create something that is entirely new. And again, not yet. And it may not even be generative AI that eventually does so, right? It could be another type of AI, or it could happen in ways that we don't expect yet, or that we can't quite imagine yet. The image on this slide was created by a human in DALL-E, is the AI image generator. So in just thinking about this particular image, where does the authorship reside? I would guess that you would say the human, right? That the human used the tool, the DALL-E AI tool. But let's think about why. So I'd like to take a moment to think about what makes an author. And this ties into the research as well that I'll explain on the next slide that I did in the fall of last year. But I think this is useful to consider. And what are the human aspects of being an author and a creator? So I broke this down into 4 different categories. So creativity, right? The idea must originate. Yes. We are all influenced by our experiences, our environments, our exposures, the people around us. However, we still create new things, and we create new writing, and we create new inventions, right? Things that weren't there before. And we do that through our agency, right? So we think up the idea, and then the author has the will to decide what to do with it, right? So the author decides to produce the product. The author has agency over what they do, when they do it, and how they do it, right? And when they do it, right? Moral responsibility. So an author is morally responsible for what they put out into the world, right? They put their name on an idea or an item, and that should be able to be discoverable. And that author has to have the ability to be accountable for what they put out into the world, And the fourth area is legal responsibility. So this is a little different from moral responsibility in that the author has to accept legal responsibility for their creations in the public sphere, the economic sphere, including the publishing industry, which moves me into a small research project that I completed in the fall with a University of Pittsburgh colleague, Amy Jenkins. So I'd like to give her credit as well. We performed this project for a generative AI group that was meeting on our campus. And I was part of that group, and they asked us to find out how research journals are thinking about AI and authorship. Now, you can tell I'm kind of moving into saying AI and not Gen AI. And there's a reason for that. It's because the way that the journals thought about AI, it was very broadly, and Gen AI was sort of a subset of what could be used, right? But here's what we did. We examined journals in a variety of disciplines to look for their policies and guidance on AI authorship. We used journal citation reports to find the most impactful journals. This is what we were asked to do as well. And so we used the oldest tool out there, right? And we used subject categories using various criteria that we developed. Some of it was objective, some of it was related to our university programs, and some of it was a little subjective, depending on how many journals were in categories, how many overlapped, how many subject categories overlapped, and so on. We used the top 3 journals in these categories by journal impact factor. And we searched within the journal, we searched the journal website, we searched the publisher website for any AI authorship guidance. And I'd like to show you the sort of results and the findings that we had based in these 4 frames for being an author. So I think you can guess that in the areas of creativity and agency, AI cannot be an author. That was very clear. It was abundantly clear. An author must be a person. There was no research journal that said that AI could be an author, okay? Implied in that, and sometimes stated, was that AI, part of the reason for that was that AI does not have the agency to act independently and to be accountable. So another item related to creativity, we found that where AI use in images is generally not permissible. And for many of these journals that are scientific journals, this was especially important because AI use in scientific images could be highly detrimental to science and to the advance of science and the advance of treatments. So generally, AI use in images was specifically singled out as not permissible. It was possible in some social sciences and some humanities journals, but it had to be disclosed, right? It had to be disclosed in a caption. It had to be up for a case-by-case review, but generally it was not permissible. I found that there was a nuanced differentiation between AI and writing as a writing assistant and using AI in analyzing and data insight, which really is sort of the heart of the human enterprise in a scientific report or article, right? Is getting the data, but then what does that data mean? So if AI was used there, and there are different tools for that besides Gen AI tools for analyzing data. So that had to be disclosed in different ways. Which brings me to the moral responsibility of the author. So the authors have to be personally accountable for their content. And that's why these journals did not consider AI to be an author. The author has responsibility for disclosure I mentioned that a couple of times already. That is in, if AI is used in a writing tool, some journals would say that you had to place that at the end of the article. And again, if you were using it in somewhere that was sort of the heart of the article, like the data analysis, you had to put it right there in that section, that you were using an AI tool to analyze the data, and that you were potentially drawing conclusions based on that analysis. So again, AI use in writing disclosed with the description of use. Different spots. It could be the disclosure statement, as I mentioned, an acknowledgement, a declarative statement, something to indicate that AI was used. And I've thought a lot about that and how important it is that it's transparent, because science is really built on trust, and it's built on transparency of what is trying to be developed. And it's based on, the reputation of the authors and the reputation of so many parts of the process. And they really felt it had to be disclosed, I think, for that and for other reasons that I'll get into. So different steps of publication process are considered separately. So there was one set of guidance for authors, another set of guidance for peer reviewers and manuscript reviewers. And the publishers often said that the third party or public AI like ChatGPT or others should not be used for peer review or for analysis to give peer review. Because as we know, that as soon as you put that data into a public AI, it is ingested and then it's used by that AI. So they were citing confidentiality and proprietary rights to not be able to use public AI in peer reviewing. Now, I say public because some publishers are creating their internal AI. So, for example, Elsevier is creating something that its writers and its peer reviewers and others can use internally to Elsevier publications. And another group that was often cited, and I put the link here, was COPE, which is the Committee on Publication Ethics. They were often cited for giving exemplary guidance in the area of moral responsibility. So on to legal responsibility. So this is another reason for disclosure. So the journal or any publisher could potentially be held liable for AI generated content. So they move that responsibility onto the author. So the author has the responsibility for all the content, even if AI is used and disclosed. So think about that for a second, that including using an LLM that is accurate or is potentially using copyrighted or plagiarized material, if an author used that as part of their journal article, then they would be responsible for errors. They would be responsible for verification, for any hallucinations that AI contributed to their work. So that could be potentially dangerous for an author to really place its trust in a tool that it doesn't know or understand how it is creating, how it is working with them. So it's really important for the author to understand if they are using AI tools, what goes on with that tool. And so from COPE, again, that Committee on Publication Ethics, authors are fully responsible for the content of their manuscript, even those parts produced by an AI tool, and are thus liable for any breach of publication ethics. So I have just a couple of more slides to discuss, and then I would welcome your questions. So what should we call using an AI in creative endeavors, right? So if AI is not an author right now, and these journals, research journals certainly do not consider AI an author right now. What do we call it when we use these tools for help? Do we call AI an assistant? Do we call it a helper, not a creator? Can it be a sounding board for ideas? Can they help us augment our ideas? Where is the ethical line in presenting something as your own idea or presenting something as a technology created idea? Should there be a line? What is the ethical boundary? If something's disclosed or not disclosed, of course, would be part of an ethical boundary. But anything they respond to with right now, as they're structured, is derivative. So is that really useful right now in a creative endeavor? And you'll see the image on this slide is from the 1982 World's Fair in Knoxville, Tennessee. It is the painting robot. So this version of automated creativity, I think, is simplistic compared to what we will have to confront soon. And honestly, it is difficult for me to contemplate if and when AI may have the necessary components for authorship, but it is not here yet. So in the next slide, I have a couple of further considerations to think about that came out of the findings and that came out of discussions at my university that we had about the findings in a couple of different venues, and that came out from that committee and their discussions, and also from our final report from that committee. So it was suggested that acceptance of the use in AI in journal articles, not just journal articles, but other writing, right? And there are so many other kinds of examples besides the particular thing that I examined, right? But their use in writing could change over time, right? And fade further and further into the background until it might be sort of impossible to separate and disclose, the part that has been, created in a joint way. And then that could cause it to become more accepted or seamless or sort of expected. I mean, we've heard all these comparisons to other kinds of tools like the calculator or other fundamental tools that have been feared but have been sort of become part of a discipline or part of just doing something. So that could happen with Gen AI. It could happen with other potential AI tools. The second thing I want to remind us of is that in discussions about publishing that I had, and in the other realms of our lives where AI is possible and is used, they continue to reflect back to us, right? The challenges that already exist, right? The biases, the bias towards race and gender and stereotyping. Again, they're derivative, right? The Gen AI tools that we have right now, and they're deriving what they know about us, and they're reflecting it back. And some of these questions that we're having about AI use are not new, having transparency, integrity, accountability. Those are not new. There are all kinds of ways for authors to potentially violate those tenets. And again, AI is another possible way to do that. But however, I have optimism. I think that the several core principles of research and sharing that, including transparency, integrity, attribution, accountability, continue to guide journal publication, article publication, and should continue to guide any use of AI in journal article publication. So thank you so much for your attention so far. I believe we have about 10 minutes left for questions or for the Q&A or the chat. I have not been following the chat.
Yes, you do have some questions,
Okay,
a few
great.
in the Q&A and a few that I grabbed from the chat as well. So let me go back. The first one was, I don't know if this was more rhetorical or not, but it was, to what extent do we humans also derive from other content?
Yes, that is true. We are all products of our environment, and we are all products of um, what's happening around us. And we do derive, right? When we do a literature review, the whole point of a literature review is in journal article publication is to go back and see what people have done, right? In the field or in that topic. And then you're trying to show that your investigation, your surveys, your analysis, your data is something that contributes something new to that conversation. And I tell my undergraduate students and grad students that all the time. So that's correct. Yes, it is. That's a good, interesting thing to think about, and how AI does that in different ways. But still, for especially for object inventions and innovations, you know, sometimes something really is new. Like this AI is new, right? It took a
Exactly.
long time to come to fruition, but and it will continue evolving. But sometimes things really are new, and even though everything is influenced, of course, by other innovations, by our experiences, and so on.
Very true. Great. Thank you. And so another question, at what point is AI used or not used? Example, Microsoft Editor uses AI, so does Grammarly, or is this just generative AI tools?
This I'm thinking more for writing of generative AI tools. And I was part of a pilot to analyze Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, which is their sort of Gen AI add-on to Word, to PowerPoint, and so on. But I found it's very clunky. It's not that great. It's not as imaginative as I would like. And, while I said I have this fear of AI being too imaginative, I guess I don't like it when it's completely derivative, when I ask it to summarize, which someone I saw just put that. Yes, AI can be a writing helper to help you summarize. But then if you ask it to summarize your summary, it gets smaller and smaller, right? It doesn't give you the back and forth of a person, of a colleague who might give you different ways to think about something. The AI is responding how it is predicting the next word that it thinks will be there without the consciousness. So it's different to use as a helper.
Right.
And I think we've all tried ChatGPT or paid for ChatGPT and so on. Any more
Okay.
direct questions, Missy, that you saw?
Yes. If a student uses an AI tool to fully write a paper, would the student be the author or would the paper have no author?
Right. So if a student did that, that's not advisable, I think, because I think what our undergraduate students are finding is that if AI does write something for them, it's not accurate, and it claims a level of knowledge or analysis that isn't true for the field, right? So it's often inaccurate. I think to use the tool correctly, you have to know something about the topic already to be able to use Gen I efficiently right now. If you're going to use it to ask to give you some kind of new information that you didn't have before, um, using it as a summary writing tool is different from asking it for information, uh, for new information about something that you don't know about, because it can easily give you very false information. So if a student's doing that and putting their name on it, I would be very afraid for them, because I don't think that's going to come out very well. And I think the professor or instructor would be able to spot it right away pretty soon. And just because also of the way that full Gen AI writing it's a little off. It can fool you, but it's often there's something that is just not quite right. about it. It can fool you for simpler things, but I would say not for a paper. For example, I asked Copilot to write me a paper on hegemony, and a 2-page paper on hegemony, and it made no sense. It made no sense whatsoever, but it did give me 2 pages, and it did give me a list of references, but it just really, if I would have handed that in as a student, the instructor would have said, did you do any reading for this class? Did you, and so on.
Right. So in that sense, do you foresee the future value of writing becoming in the edit rather than the writing itself?
For AI tools,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that's what it is referring to? The value of
so.
the value, yes. Right now, I think the value of Gen AI tools is to help to be an assistant, right? It's if you think about the art, so the Dolly tools for images and other things, it's always creating something in the style of. It might be new, it might be something that you haven't seen before, that hasn't been created before, but it's only using what it already knows about, right? And doing something in the style of that it thinks that you want to see. Well, it doesn't think that. I shouldn't ascribe thinking to it, actually. It just is returning what you've asked, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah, there was a clarification, just the value of
Oh,
anything AI can generate or generate in the future, and writing in particular right now. So
yeah,
I think you
right
answered
now,
that.
I don't think so. I have heard of tools that authors, like very prolific authors, are creating based on their own work. So if you were, say James Patterson or another author that has just written so much, and if you put all of that work into a tool for you, right, for that author, that could be a very useful, way to be an assistant to that particular writer, right? Would that be useful for me? No, because I don't, I guess if I wanted to plagiarize James Patterson, maybe, but I don't want to. And pass his work as my own. But an internal tool like that, I could see being of more value, right? A closed tool, a closed data set like that. And I've heard other authors, not James Patterson, but other authors thinking about doing something like that from publishers helping with that.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't see any other questions, just some comments. It was a active chat.
Yes, thank you so much. We're almost at our 2 minutes. 2 minutes left, I think. Oh, thank you to everyone. I see some names I recognize. Mario, Lee, thank you so much. It's nice to see you. My email was on the last slide, rlk25@pitt.edu. And this recording will be available. And I hope I can put my slide link somewhere as well. Maybe in the description. I'll put that.
Do you have it? We can just put it in the chat as well right now.
Yes, let me go. Yes, that's a good idea,
Thanks.
Missy. Let me put it in there right now. Hold on one second. Okay, here's the links to the slides, the link to the Google Doc. Thank you so much. I think I'll stop the recording now.